Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today it is the Petalburg Razors going up against the Kitakami Rogues, and as these two sides have a look at their opening hands, let's have a look at this tale of the tape between these two teams who have already had their buys so far this season. The Razors coming off theirs in round 2, they've had a strong start to this season and they want to continue that momentum, looking to get back to that Champions game, whereas the Rogues in 7th place had the buy in round 1, but with them in 7th, do not count them out. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the Colorless decks? Will it be the Darkness decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And going first, it is going to be that Potown deck of the Rogues, moving the Alolan Rattata into the active spot. The Razors are starting off with their Awakened Heroes deck, and they are going with the Type Null in the active spot. One of their 2 Kamalas going onto the bench, and they've already got that Silvally in hand as well. But here we go, our game 1 in our 3-game series. You get 2 points for each of these games that you win, so you want to make sure that you can get all 3 because they do count towards the leaderboard, and it is the Professor's Research being played by the Rogues. They get the Alolan Raticate, they also get the Purloin, and they've already got that Lipard in hand. We can see that they've got the Alolan Persian, the Guzma, and the leftovers as they send it over to the Razors for their first turn. They do draw the Beast Wall. They've got that second Kamala that we mentioned alongside the Lusamine, but they are going to get that burst energy onto the Type Null. If they flip aheads with this Quick Blow, they get an extra 20 damage, but they get the tail, so it will only do that base 20 damage to the Alolan Rattata. It comes back over to the Rogues. They will surely want to get that Raticate online, but with that said, it does require 2 energy. They've just pulled the big Malasada, and they do choose to go with the Alolan Raticate here, so they won't be able to go for the damage. But with that said, this could be an error as well, because that Silvally is in hand for the Razors, and it does an additional 50 damage when a supporter card has been played. And the Rogues thinking about where they want to move that energy. They can start setting up the Raticate or the Lipard, who are both online, but they do set up the Raticate here, getting a first energy onto it, plus playing that big Malasada to restore 10 health, and they're going to put the leftovers onto it as well. This will take its health up to 110 because it will chair down on those leftovers as they end their turn, but only when they end their turn, not when the Razors finish theirs. And it is that second Silvally being pulled for the Razors, and they can't play the Lusamine because what Lusamine does is they draw 2 random discarded energies back onto an Ultra Beast, and there are no discarded energies or Ultra Beasts in play, as it is only 50 damage onto the Alolan Raticate here, so it's still in this contest as the Alolan Meowth is pulled for the Rogues. And there is that second energy onto the Raticate. They can go for that Scrounging Scarf. It does 50 damage. They also get the Meowth online as well. And with that Scrounging Scarf, there's 50 damage onto the Silvally, and it is that Beast Wall being put back, being discarded as well from the Razors' hand due to that Scrounging Scarf, but it is the Gladion now being pulled for the Razors. They're going to play that immediately. This is a supporter card. They are able to get that second Type Null out of their deck thanks to that Gladion, and they immediately get that onto the bench. But as we said, that Brave Buddies will now do an extra 50 damage, and this is going to allow the Razors to take the first point here in game 1, as that Alolan Raticate has been discarded. But as we said, all 3 games count towards our leaderboard. You still want to win as many games in the series. You will always want to win as many games, but it's always a benefit to win 2 out of 1. But if you can 2 with a 1 loss, but if you can get 3 out of 3, that is fantastic to help you climb up the leaderboard. As the Rogues are looking at how they want to play this, they have moved the Meowth into the active spot. They've got that Lipard receiving its first of 2 energy, and it can do 70 damage as well. They're trying to determine whether or not they want to get that Persian online. The Meowth has 60 health. It is the big Malasada being pulled for the Razors now, and they are going to get that second Silvally onto the bench, plus get an energy onto the Kamala now. If it was in the active spot, it would immediately fall asleep due to that comatose ability, but it does remain awake, no status conditions whilst on the bench. 50 damage onto that Meowth from the Silvally. Comes back to the Rogues. They do pull the Pokeball. They immediately play that, so they're guaranteed to get a basic Pokemon here, and they get their second Rattata, and they already have that second Raticate in hand, so the Rattata going onto the bench. And they're thinking about how they want to play this. They can, if they choose, get that Persian online, buying that Meowth a bit more time up in its health. They do get a first energy onto the Rattata as well, and they send it back over to the Razors. They're willing to let that Meowth go as the Celesteela has been pulled for the Razors, so it could have been a good play because they would be able to play that Lucamine, but there would still be no benefit from that either because there are no discarded energy from the Razors. They're yet to drop a point. The Brave Body's 50 damage onto the Meowth, but speaking of dropping points, the Rogues have had 2 Pokemon now discarded. That's 2 points for the Razors. So if they get 1 more, they will win this game 1, and they haven't dropped a game this season so far, let alone a series. They've only had 1 series, but with that said, that's still impressive for any team to go 3-0 as the Raticate is brought online. The Lipard is brought into the active spot with that slashing claw, as we said, 70 damage to wipe that Silvally off the board, taking the first point for the Kitakami Rogues and this Po-Town deck. Now the Awakened Heroes can move any of their bench Pokemon. They all need 1 more energy. They do go with the Silvally though into the active spot, and they've just pulled the Guzma, but there's no Pokemon tools on the side of the Kitakami Rogues, so they can't play that now either. So the Silvally will only be able to do 50 damage once again, not being able to capitalize on those supporter cards that are in this deck. It does come back over to the Rogues. They do get that second Lipard in hand, and we do see the Raticate getting its second energy as well. They can go for another Slashing Claw if they want. They can also go for the Retreat. Lipard does have a 1 retreat cost energy, and that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to go for the Scrounge and Scarf with this Alolan Raticate, 50 damage onto the Silvally, and it is the big Malasada being discarded from the hand of the Razors as that second Gladion is pulled, but there's no Sylveallies, I was going to say Sylveons. There's no Sylveallies or Type Nulls remaining in the deck, so even the Gladion's now useless. They cannot capitalize on the power of Sylvealli here for the Razors, but it will be another 50 damage, except they're choosing to retreat the Sylvealli and go for the Rolling Tackle with this Kamala, bringing the Raticate down to only 40 health. The Awakened Heroes need 1 more point to take this game 1. The second Alolan Meowth has been pulled for the Rogues, and they are going to get another energy, it looks like, onto the Lipard. They do have some options here. They do have that second Alolan Persian in hand. It is a 3 energy retreat cost for the Alolan Raticate. They're willing to give up this game. They're going for another Scrounge and Scarf, another 50 damage, but it will be the Kamala who can give 70 damage to wipe this Raticate off the board, and this Awakened Heroes deck will take game 1 for the Petalburg Razors, as again they're looking to not drop a single game in this series. And as we have our first table reset, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the action in the PokeType League TCG, as it is once again going to be the Razors going first. This time they're using their Verdant Cavern deck, and we can see the 2 Skitties plus the Stuffle in hand, one of the Skitties going into the active spot. They've also got the Oranguru immediately going onto the bench. They've got that Professor's Research, but they're going up against the Alter Genesis deck of the Kitakami Rogues, who move the Poipole, their only basic Pokemon in hand, onto their active spot, but it is the Yungoos being pulled by the Razors. They're immediately playing that Professor's Research, finally able to use a supporter card, and they get the 2 Delcatties as well, who only require 1 energy for that energy assist. It does 30 damage, but it generates an energy for one of the benched Pokemon as well, a great setup Pokemon, as the Rogues pull their Lucamine. They do have Ultra Beast, including this Poipole, in their deck, and they're going to play the Beast Ball. This can only be played whilst the opposing side has not taken any points, which means Poipole will take 20 less damage in the coming turn, and they've got that Poison Barb onto the Poipole. They absolutely want to discourage this Skitty from going on the offensive, and they are trying for these 2 head flips, 20 damage for each heads. They do get 1 with this 2-step. It's only going to be a 1-step though, 20 damage onto the Skitty as it comes back over to the Razors, who do pull their Gumshoes here, and they already have that Yungoos in hand, but here it is, the Delcatty coming online. Its health all the way up to 70 now after taking that 20 damage, and there is the benched Delcatty as well, the Yungoos going onto that final bench slot. But as we said, with this energy assist, 30 damage onto the opposing active Pokemon. Although they're thinking of not doing it, they don't want to contend with the Delcatty being poisoned here. A very interesting choice as the Rogues pull the Naganadel. So immediately this Poipole is going to be evolved, and it will do 40 damage with the Electro House, but not just that, Delcatty cannot avoid the poisoning now because it automatically poisons the opposing Pokemon, and Delcatty is brought down to only 20 health remaining. It is the second Oranguru being pulled for the Razors, as they do get a first energy onto the bench to Oranguru, and the Gumshoes is online. Again, this energy assist, they will generate an additional energy in their energy zone, 30 damage onto the Naganadel, and it is Oranguru receiving its second energy. Naganadel only has 70 health remaining. They need to pull a basic Pokemon, and they get the Trubbish, and they've already got the 2 Garbodas in hand, so the Trubbish immediately coming online for the Kitakami Rogues. With that Super Poison Breath of Garboda, it does require 3 energy. This Electro House, another 40 damage. Delcatty is wiped off the board for the Ultra Genesis deck, taking the first point here in Game 2. They're trying to work their way back into this series. And the Razors thinking about how they want to approach this, immediately move the Oranguru into the active spot. They have pulled the big Melisada as well. Not only does it restore 10 health from a Pokemon, but it will cure them of any status conditions they may hold, as they hammer in 70 damage onto the Naganadel, and the Razors take back their first point in this game as well, with the Verdant Cavern deck leveling the playing field against the Ultra Genesis deck of the Kitakami Rogues. It is the Trubbish being moved into the active spot, and Trubbish only has 60 health, as well as the Beastite has been pulled for the Kitakami Rogues, a Pokemon tool that can be attached to an Ultra Beast that boosts their damage by 10 for every point that team has taken. But the Garboda is now online, getting its second energy. It still requires one more, and they cannot play that Lusamine because it only works with Ultra Beast, as we see the Oranguru starting to lose health thanks to that poisoning here. They can get that second Oranguru with that Primate's Trap on a line here. The Razors thinking about how they want to approach this. They're looking at the Gumshoes, they're hovering the energy over it. They're thinking of getting an energy onto the Oranguru. They may be opting to retreat it here to cure it of that poisoning, because this will take it out of discard range. So from the Garboda, they're willing to give up 2 of these Darkness energies. That is their energy retreat cost, and they're going to move the Delcatty into the active spot. They could have played the Ilima as well to bring that Oranguru back into hand. So an interesting decision there, as the Stuffle does enter the bench. And they do finish their turn here. It comes back over to the Kitakami Rogues, who pull their second Trubbish. They can start setting up their second Garboda in the next turn, but this active Garboda still requires its third energy that it does get, again, 70 damage with the Super Poison Breath. It is going to leave this Delcatty with that poison status condition, so it's already brought down to 10 health thanks to that poisoning here. And it is the Beware being pulled for the Petalburg Razors. Both these sides having only taken 1 point here in Game 2. It is the Tantrum Beware. It does require 4 energy, 130 damage, but it will confuse itself in the process. And the Razors are thinking, and they are going to play the Ilima, so they're actually going to use the Delcatty coming back into hand here. And it is the Oranguru with that hammer and moved into the active spot. So a very clever play, some good forethought here from the Petalburg Razors. The Oranguru now has a third energy onto it. Once again, they do play the big Melisada. This is going to restore 10 health for the Oranguru and 70 damage onto the Garboda, bringing it down to only 50 health remaining. As it comes back over to the Rogues, they do get the leftovers, but the leftovers will not be enough for this Garboda, as much as I'm sure it would love to chow down on that half-eaten apple. But it is that benched Garboda now online, getting its first energy, and the Super Poison Breath onto the Oranguru, bringing it down to only 20 health. There's the poisoning, bringing it down to 10. There's no Ilima in hand for the Razors. It's the second Beware, though, that they do pull. And they do get that Delcatty back onto the Skitty after having played that Ilima on the previous turn. And they do get a first energy here onto the Beware, or at least they're hovering over it, contemplating their options. It does require 4 energy. The Gumshoes only requires 2. They have options here. It is the Delcatty that only requires 1, and they're going with the Gumshoes, getting its first of 2 required energy. The hammering from this Oranguru will wipe the Garboda off the board, and the Razors only need 1 more point to take Game 2 and lock up this series, as they hope to go for a second clean sweep this season. We do see that second Garboda moved into the active spot, as the poisoning does take down that Oranguru, as well. The Garboda still requires 2 more energy here, and it is the Delcatty moved into the active spot. It does have 90 health. It's the Absol being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues, and it does get moved into the bench. That Unseen Claw does 20 damage, but it does an additional 60, I believe it is, if the opposing Pokemon is poisoned. And then the Garboda does automatically poison the opposing Pokemon, or has the status condition on them, in fact. The Rogues thinking about how they want to approach this. They do decide to end their turn, sending it over to the Razors. They do pull their second Stuffle here, and they've got the Beware. They've also got that second Oranguru in hand, as it is the Delcatty getting its first energy. With this energy assist, they can start to generate energy for the bench Pokemon. They've just moved the Oranguru onto the bench, 30 damage onto the Garboda, and it's the Beware that they're going to start generating energy for here, as the big Melisada has been pulled for the Rogues. They think of playing that onto the Garbodor as well to try and restore 10 health, but it is going to get its third energy, so a super poison breath, 70 damage onto that Delcatty, and it's got 10 health remaining. They're going to have to retreat it here so that they don't drop this game too. They do pull the Pokeball, which they do play immediately, and they get that second Yungoos in hand. And they are going to retreat the Delcatty here, bringing that Gumshoos into the active spot with that headbang, getting its second edge. It does 50 damage. Garbodor has 90 health remaining, so there it is, 50 damage onto the Garbodor here as it comes back over to the Rogues, who pull the Nihilego. Nihilego does boost the damage that the poisoning does by an additional 10 of the opposing active Pokemon. It is the big Melisada being put onto the Garbodor here, and again, that opposing Pokemon will automatically be poisoned. It's the leftovers onto the Garbodor as well, so it will restore 10 health at the end of the Rogue's turn. And the Absol does get its first energy. There's also the Lusamine in hand for the Rogues. They can get 2 energy onto the Nihilego if they so choose. And they almost didn't do that, but that is exactly what they're going to decide to do. They did realize that that was in hand. They get the 2 energy that are required from the discard pile onto the Nihilego. Super Poison Breath onto the Gumshoos. 70 damage. It is poisoned, but it is badly poisoned now thanks to that Nihilego. So it will take 20 damage instead of the usual 10. And that Razors have just pulled their own Poison Barb. The Gumshoos cannot do enough damage to take out the Garbodor here. They need to think about how they want to approach this. It is a 1 energy retreat cost. The Razors are hovering the energy here over the Oranguru. Now keeping in mind that Beware does already have 1 energy on it. It still requires 3 more. And they go with the Oranguru here, who can only do 40 damage, but they are going with the Headbang. They're well aware of what's going to happen. The Poisoning's going to take it out of this match, which means the Rogues with this Ultra Genesis deck do take game 2, but they're unable to get the additional damage with the Garbodor. The Razors thinking games ahead. They're confident. I hope they're confident they can take game 3, as they are going first thanks to that coin flip following our final board reset. This Imperial Command deck, and they've got the Lillipup in hand. We can see the Herdier and the Ambipom as well. The Rogues playing with their Skull and Bone deck, moving the Sandile into the active spot. We can see it, they've already got the Krokorok and Crocodile in hand, but it's the Stoutland being pulled for the Petalburg Razors. Both these teams having their rare candy in hand as well. It is the Poison Barb onto the Lillipup. As it comes over to the Rogues, they get their second Sandile. It looks like we have 2 good boys there going head to head in the middle of the board to that Sandile and Lillipup. They just deserve a pat. Well, I'm not so sure how confident you would feel patting that Sandile, who does get the leftovers placed onto it. As we know, at the end of the Rogue's turn, not at the end of both turns, they do restore 10 health, as there is 20 damage onto the Lillipup, thanks to that bite from the Sandile, who is now dealing with that poison. Coming back over to the Razors, they get their second Stoutland in hand. They can immediately get that on line with that Guard Dog Visage. Visage? I think that's what it's called. Is an ability that causes the opposing Pokemon to require 1 more energy as well, but the Herdier only requires 1 energy for this bite. 30 damage onto the Sandile, who again is poisoned here. So 30 damage onto the Sandile, bringing it down to 30 health. That poison bringing it down to 20, and it is the Rogues pulling their Mareanie. And Mareanie immediately moved onto the bench. That Toxapex only requires 1 energy as well, but there are 2 of them in this deck. They can get the Krokorok on line here too. That Light Punch does require 2 energy, but they're hovering it over the bench, so they're willing to give up this active Sandile here to start setting up the Krokorok on the bench with this bite onto the Herdier. Another 20 damage. They don't have to worry about that Poison Barb poisoning it again. As much as it wants to do the additional damage, there is the leftovers as the Sandile chowing down on it to restore 10 health that is immediately cancelled out by the poisoning. The Razors pulling the Apom. They've already got the Ambipom in hand, and for Stoutland, it only requires 2 energy to go for that Sharp Fang. As we said, that Guard Dog Visage, opposing Pokemon requiring extra energy to do damage. The Sharp Fang, though, 70 damage, is going to wipe this Sandile out into the discard pile, and the Razors with their Imperial Command deck do take 0.1 in game 3. And it is the Mareanie being moved into the active spot. The Lily being pulled for the Rogues. Lily restores 60 health from a stage 2 Pokemon, which is exactly what Crocodile is, who is now online. It gets its second energy. It does require 3 energy for those Poaching Fangs to do 90 damage, but with the the Stoutlands are online, it requires an additional energy. We need to keep that in mind as the Ambipom is online. The leftovers have been pulled for the Petalburg Razors. The Ambipom gets its first of 2 required energy as well, and they try for the catching tail that will allow them to pull a Pokemon tool out of their deck, but that Poison Barb and the leftovers are the only 2, as another 70 damage. Marini wiped out of this match, and the Razors are looking to take Game 3 and take this series over the Rogues. It is the Crocodile moved into the active spot. It's going to require 4 energy to go on the offensive. The Guzma has been pulled for the Rogues. They're going to play that immediately, knowing they can't go on the offensive yet. So Stoutland immediately loses the Poison Barb. There's the 3rd energy for those Poaching Fangs, and it does get to flip 3 coins when it is able to use it. And for every heads of those 3 coins, a random card in the hand of the Razors goes back into their deck, and their deck is shuffled as the Ambipom does get its 2nd energy. The leftover is now being put onto the Stoutland, so now it's going to start restoring its health. And there is 70 damage onto the Crocodile, so massive damage there by the Razors. They can see the game win in shot, but they are unaware of that Lily in hand for the Rogues. So I may have called a Lucamine before, but I meant Lily if I did. So it is the Lily now being played, as they've just pulled the Big Melisada as well. 60 health being restored for the Crocodile. The Big Melisada restoring an extra 10. Again, 90 damage from Crocodile with the Poaching Fangs, and they get those 3 coin flips. There's only 3 cards in hand for the Petalburg Razors, as Stoutland is brought down to only 20 health remaining. They get 1 heads. They get 2. They get all 3, and all 3 cards, the rare candies and the Stoutland, back into the deck of the Razors. That deck is shuffled, and they are going to now pull a Herdia, who is absolutely useless to them at this point in time. Keeping in mind, Stoutland does require 2 energy to retreat. The Ambipom gets its 3rd energy, and the Sharp Fang 70 damage again onto the Crocodile, bringing it down to 70 health. And there are those leftovers, but they're not going to be on Stoutland for too much longer. The Rogues still yet to take a point. They have to bring this back and take 3 points in a row. It is the Professor's Research pulled for the Rogues. They play that immediately. They get the Crocodile. They get their 2nd Marini here. The Marini immediately going on to the bench, as I'm sure the Rogues are glad that there are no Sabrinas in Season A3 of the PokeType League TCG, but what they're also happy about is they have just wiped this Stoutland off the board. They just need 1 heads to send that Herdia back into the deck, but it's 3 tails this time being flipped by the Kitakami Rogues in this Skull and Bone deck, as they've just taken their 1st point. The Razors moving their Ambipom into the active spot. It can do 50 damage. They've just pulled the Lily. This is not good for the Razors, as they have no Pokemon on their bench. This Corkscrew Punch does 50 damage. It tries for the Catching Tail. They're trying to get anything that they can. They get a 4th energy onto the Ambipom. Crocodile is going to outlast this hit, and Crocodile does 90 damage. Ambipom has 90 health. The Rogues pulling the Toxapex, but I don't think that's what they're concerned with. They're worried about those Poaching Fangs, as they have brought this game back. They didn't need 3 points in a row. The Razors unable to get a Pokemon on the bench. It's 2 heads being flipped. Those 2 cards in the hand of the Razors back into their deck, but that's no longer an issue either, because the Rogues have brought it back to take Game 3 over the Petalburg Razors in fantastic fashion, and this has moved them up into 5th place, as next round they're going up against the Levia Constrictors, whereas for the Razors they are in 3rd place, and next round they are going up against the Holland Allies. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought the best card was, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.